Hello, ISIQS. How are you doing? Today is just like 2 days after the end of Summer National Conference. And one thing that I really wanted to do is just do a quick rundown of what happened in the iGIP functional track, especially for those of you who weren't there and for those to just get a quick recap. Right? So we started with a basic introduction where we talked about our current context, talked about how our delivery rate in the past year has not been that great, with like only 53%. We ran through our national strategies for the coming year, as well as our goals and how we created those goals. Once we did that, we split up into a session for the iGIP process, where some individuals who had a good grasp of the process worked on current bottlenecks in our iGIP process, all the way from market research up until re-raising, and came up with some solutions as well, which we're going to be working on for the next couple of months. And the other bunch of people worked with Phil to actually understand how the process works and how to go from one step to another. And you can, in the PowerPoint that we put out in the output, you can truly see how each of the steps move from one place to another. After that, we had a session on our products, and it was more on like focus sales. We ran through our current products, launched our country partners, talked about how and why having country partners is really important, and talked about some other strategies as well, which are really important in terms of focus sales. The next day, Perry led a session on network engagement, which was primarily for all of us to understand that we can generate leads more than just cold calling, and that is something we need to move away from. We need to look at alumni, board of advisors, LinkedIn, our university, networking events, and various other forms of lead generation as opposed to cold calling. We also had a simulation on calling, and the reason we had that simulation was that people in the iGIP track had a better idea of how to pitch ISAC, and that's what cold calling does a good job in, right? So for your newer members or those of you that haven't made calls in a while, like make a couple of cold calls just so that you get in like the zone all over again to make that pitch. But use warmer methods and make warm calls as opposed to cold calls to truly generate leads. Right? As this was happening, Phil was also with a bunch of people from AD where they went through actual forms and sourcing and how we can source for open TNs, both with our country partners as well as in general. And we have created some graphics, and you can also find it in the PowerPoint in the output. Now that was all that happened in the track for iGIP, both for members and for VPs. Now we also had another about 4 to 5 hours just with our VPs, right? The next day. The first thing we did was to talk about the growth model and our LC structures guide. We've evolved our growth model to like be more specific between each of these stages. So, between creativity and direction, we went through creativity 1, 2, 3, direction 1, 2, 3. We created a list of various activities that happens in each of the stages, and we also showcased how to evolve from one stage to another, and told all the chapters like which stage we felt they were in. And this is truly helpful for you guys as VPs and even team leaders or those who want to be VPs in the coming year to understand where your entity is with respect to iGIP and what needs to happen to move on. And something we did with that was to showcase like what structures you should have with respect to your entity based on your growth model stage, right? So for example, entities in creativity 1 and 2 should not have team leaders or have a really large structure, but truly focus on like education processes and like bulk sales activity, and also just focus on one sub product as opposed to like doing intense market research and focusing on multiple sub products. Yeah. The next session we just went over some iGIP laws, which are basically things like that are mentioned in our contract as well as in our compendium that all of us should be aware of. And it was really clear in that session that some of us like that weren't very sure about certain things that we truly have to do. After that, Phil led a session on leveraging our partners. He talked about a few models in terms of customer service, but the most important thing to understand is that growth should be a function of our customers and not just effort, right? So what I mean by that is often we just try and get more sales activity, more sales intensity, and new sales. But what we should try and focus on is how can we leverage our current partners, our current clients, our older clients to not only re-raise and upsell, but also, for example, to get referrals, right? After which we had about a 45-minute discussion, which was an open space where delegates could like come up with any questions that they had or like any concerns. And the majority things that were talked about was about networking, and we have a flip chart output in the output as well. That was the end of the first day with the VPs. And the second day, we launched the sales development program template. We had our VP ICXs and our VP TMs both there. I have shared the template with all the VP ICXs. If you don't have it, please email me and I can share that with you. And what we want you to do is in the SDP folder, which I've shared with everyone, you copy paste the SDP template and personalize it for your entity, right? And we need you to do this by this week. The reason why is because all our NST coaches will be contacting you for a call in the following week and run that template with you to see what you've planned in your for your calendar, for your goals, for all those activities. It is flexible. You can decide who should be responsible for what. We have some suggested responsibilities and some suggested KPIs and a timeline, but it truly depends on when your semester starts, etc. So please use it. The feedback we got was really good at the session, and I think it'll be really helpful for us to drive iGIP in the coming year, right? And just to wrap things up, we had a quick closing session. We did some reflection, and people paired up to become buddies who they're going to follow up with in the coming year. So our goal for the coming year for 14-15 is 165 realizations, out of which we expect 135 to come from our chapters. We truly feel our strategies of focus sales, leadership in GIP, supply demand, and standardizing our AD process is truly going to help us deliver on this number. And I want to say I'm really proud coming out of SNC with the iGIP track. I think we're all in the right mindset. We're all really driven and are committed to make GIP happen. So please go through the output. Let me know if you have any questions, and please contact your NST coaches as well. They're here to help you. And just as a note, I'm going to be in Taiwan for the next about 2 weeks for International Congress. I will have access to internet, but my responses may be a little slow. So yeah, let's make GIP happen.